So today we're doing the install on these TrackSpec Motorsports GTI hood louvers and their Xtreme Wicker kit, which is what I got on here. There's just rubber pieces on top. So I bought them both together, and the idea with this is to the first one, primary, is extract heat out of the engine bay. These C5s are known to run hot, so that's a good thing. But more importantly for me, I'm looking for front downforce. This is my race car. You know, I've got a giant spoiler in the rear, and I've got great downforce in the rear, but I need to bounce that into the front. I'm going to be putting a splitter on, just not yet. But wanting to get the high pressure that builds up in the front of these cars out, and these hood louvers do great. So I've got both the center and the sides. That's part of the GTI kit. And then I went as far as to actually cut out the wheel wells, so that way any high pressure that builds up in the wheel well, which it does, has a way to get out. These aren't my race wheels, but you get the idea of what it would look like in there. These were pretty easy to install. The kit comes with most everything you need. It comes with great templates, some decent instructions, and then the rivets. And then all you need is a rivet gun. One thing that I found, these are all rivets here. One thing that I found was really beneficial is using Clecos, which is like a temporary rivet. I talk about it later in the video, but those are the only things. It's not needed, but it makes it a lot easier in my opinion, and they're not that expensive. And then these are held in with, if you get the Wicker kits, they're these little bolts that bolt in the fronts that replaces the rivets. But that was really easy to install. The instructions say to use a cutoff wheel. This is a fiberglass hood. It makes a huge mess. So I actually had my shop vac running in the background to suck up the most of the dust that was coming off. And then I used this, you know, your typical multi-tool. I found it so much easier to cut with this. The instructions said cutoff wheel or jigsaw. That was way easier. Highly recommend. It actually made a lot less dust. But yeah, further ado, let's get into this install video. See what, this is what it looks like at the end, but let's see what it looks like while it's getting installed. Man, these look good. So the first kind of step in the instructions is to find the center line of the hood. Now, if you're just installing the side vents, you don't need to do this, but if you're installing the center one, definitely need to. So you see me here, I'm making a ton of measurements, and then I eventually take a big straight metal ruler and draw the center line. Then after that, taking off the heat shield under the bottom of the hood. Once you start cutting holes in it, you can't have that anymore, so pretty much take that off. And then once again, a lot more measuring. I think the instructions say you want to start the bottom of that center one at like 17 inches from the front of the hood. I went with that. You can move it up and down all you want. I mean, it's your car, do what you want, but I figured they did the right measurement, so that's where I did that. And then those side ones, they say an inch from the side, and I have inch wide blue tape, so I just taped it there and then put it right along that blue. And then you see me measuring out and putting blue tape under the edge of the stencils, so that way when I cut, I scratch the hood a little less. So that's what I'm doing here as I just get everything lined up and cleaned up and ready for cutting. All right, so I'm getting ready to cut. The instructions, not really the best instructions necessarily. You know, it talks about putting the templates on, cutting it, and putting them on. Some of this, like A and B, needs to be 6.5 inches above the headlight. Headlight's curved, you know. So what I did was I put the template on there, measured a bunch, transferred it to this, to the car. And because I plan on cutting the fender wells out of both sides, and I don't want water to be in here, this little rubber gasket would normally touch this. So if you look on here, we're gonna be cutting it just below this. So that way when this is in here, it's gonna be about right there or so. You'll see that this will still have the chance to seal against the hood and keep the water coming from here out of the fuse and where the battery is. Normally the battery is really big and it sits up here, but I have this little 3-pound battery, so your results may vary, but I'm gonna put that one there. And then everything else should be where it's supposed to be. So time for me to get ready to cut this thing. Oh yeah, and the templates are paper and they're flat, and obviously the hood isn't, so you're gonna get some weird crinkles in here, but it's just something to deal with. Time to get cutting. So I chose to do this with the hood on the car.
didn't want to take it off, and I felt if I covered it, I would do good enough to get the dust down. Now this is where you're using a multi-purpose tool. I'm using mine with a metal / wood blade, and you can see it doesn't create a ton of dust. I mean, it creates a little bit. What you can't see is I have my shop vac on the other side kind of sucking up the dust. But I tried leaving that center support in, thinking it would be needed. You see me messing around with it a bunch here. I eventually cut it off because it's not needed. The actual frame itself of the hood louvers provides the structural support, so you don't really need that. But yeah, every time I cut, I came back through with a sander and kind of cleaned up all the lines to make it all nice and smooth, and then went to town cutting the sides in. The instructions say that if you want like a cleaner look at the end, to actually cut it almost like an 1/8 or a 1/16 of an inch or onto the outside of the template. So I did cut to the outside of the template, and you see a little bit less hood when you're looking through the louvers. And I also followed up with doing some extra cutting, which you'll see a little bit from now. But you see every time I check to make sure it fits, and then I come back through with the hand sander and make sure it's all nice and smooth. And I would recommend having some type of respirator because the dust is bad for you. But once I got done cutting, see, I come back through and really measure a bunch more times, and I realized that when you look through the louvers, you could still see those sections of the hood. If you cut straight, you can see on the left there, when you cut straight, there's like a inch gap in between the bent structural kind of beam or whatever that goes across. So you can see that when you're looking through the angle, through the louvers at an angle. So I come back through and I cut those at an angle, so that way when you're looking through the hood, you can't actually see the inside support braces. And you see me come back through and cut the middles off at an angle there as well. And then get started on cutting the wheel wells out. Now this is a race car, so if I made a mistake, oh well, it's a race car. So if it's your daily and you actually care about what it looks like and not looks over function, then maybe think more about this. But I care more about function, and I wanted that to have a lot better pressure, relieving the pressure from underneath the wheel wells and the hood. Now my car's black, but if you had a silver, red, whatever color car, and you put these hood louvers on, you would be able to see around the edge of the hood louver. You can see that the car's body color will shine through a little bit. So what I did here is I masked it all off. I cleaned it all off with paint prep. Then I came back through and just painted it with matte black, because when you cut through the fiberglass, it leaves it white. So this blacks it all out, so you can't see it when you look through the hood louvers. Just gives you a nice, more finished look. And that's what I did. And then I started measuring a million times to try to line up where I wanted that the hood louver in the center. And the instructions say to start with a single rivet in the center at the bottom, to line it all up and then go through. And I'm using Clecos here, which I talk about.
So I'm working on installing this. Been using these Clecos. These things are awesome. They, temporary rivets, but they are like super secure. They're quick and easy. You just see what you do. You compress that. Let's go. It comes right out. So you look it on here. See, when you let go, it expands. So really, I drill my holes. I can get everything lined up. Let go, and it's in there, not going anywhere. Now I can line my part, and I don't have to worry about misalignment or anything like that. And I can just go through and rivet them one at a time and make it permanent. So I'm gonna keep doing this. I only have so many of these 1/8 inch Clecos, so I'm gonna move on to the next step. But yeah, super cool.
Now here's where it comes into a little bit of a difference when you buy the Xtreme Wicker kit. You can see that I removed a couple of those Clecos, and this is another reason why the Clecos are really awesome, because I can put all the Clecos in, I can pre-drill all the holes, and I can keep it completely solid where I want it the entire time. And then when it comes to putting the Wicker kit in, I can just take those Clecos out real quick, and I can put those front bolts in for the Wicker kit. And then I've already got the Clecos still there holding the main piece above it in place, and then come back through and do the rivets. And you can see I work my way through pretty quickly getting all those rivets in. It's best to do the center first, so that way you can reach through if you need to, through the holes on the side to finish the center rivets and everything. And once I get that center done, then I come back and I start really measuring a million times and doing the sides. And once again, doing with the rivets, starting with the center at the bottom, and then doing everything else on there. And the rivets, or the Clecos, really come in handy here because it's hard to tell, but there's quite a large bend but on that side. So if you start in the center, then the two sides don't touch the hood, and you have to really push down pretty hard to get it to bend the hood louver to the shape of the hood, and then affix it. And you see that I actually start with the front and then work my way back and finish up the rest of it.
So if you're installing this, I said how awesome these Clecos are, but I think they're like almost required. Not really almost required. You could do this without them, but so in this case, it really only required if you have the Xtreme Wicker kit like I do. Well, normally you would just drill this hole, you'd put the rivet in, and then you would do this rivet and that rivet. But when you're doing these, they're rubber, you know, I can't do this one. I guess you could bend this out of the way and put, and then drill the hole, but you really don't want to drill the hole until they're all in place. So I was able, using these Clecos, to drill that one, put it in place so it's centered, measure it, make sure everything's good with the one up there, and then drill that one, put a Cleco there, and then put a Cleco there, because you know the hood's not flat, so there's actually quite a bit of pressure on this. If I take this Cleco out, I can stick my finger in there, it's so far up. But that way, when it's tight like that with that Cleco, now I can drill that hole and that hole, which are required when you're installing the Wicker kit. So, you know, these things, if you don't already have them in your kit, get some Clecos. They're real cheap. I got this set for like $30, which comes with a bunch of random Clecos off Amazon. Maybe I'll put it in the description. And if you're ever going to do rivets again, like, it's really nice to have, and it's not that expensive. It'll save you some hassle. Just, is what it is. Anyway, that one's done. I'll rivet it in, and then work on the side one here, and then I'll work on the other side one over there. Coming together.
So all that was left at this point was to do the passenger side, and this was pretty easy. Tape at first, get it all measured out, then drill the bottom one, put the bottom one in after it's been measured a bunch, and do the top, middle, and then just do the rest. Then you see how the Clecos there, I can just take the bottoms off and use the bolts on the Wicker kit on the bottom. If you don't have the Wicker kit, you're just putting rivets in there. But then after the Wicker kit is in, you just go back through and do all of the rivets until you're finished. So this is a great little off-season project. Pretty inexpensive, really, compared to other stuff I bought for the car. I can't wait to see how this thing does during the season, and I'm looking forward to installing a front splitter on the car to kind of complement this and balance out the downforce from the rear spoiler. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you out on the track. Time for me to get back to work.